Hi there, and welcome to Let's Slow Down, a podcast for all of you who feel tired and stressed from this overwhelming world. Here we'll have fun, inspiring conversations about living life on our own terms and explore ways to ease the pace of our modern world, because life really is good when you're relaxed enough to be present for it. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Stolting, and I welcome you to this space where I hope to inspire you to slow down, because life is too short to let it go by in a blur. So take a deep breath, relax, and enjoy the show. I have a special guest with me today, Gina Roof. She's a nutrition and wellness health coach of Simply Balanced with Gina, a fitness instructor and mom of 3. She was certified through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and has been practicing as a health coach for the past 10 years, guiding and inspiring others with a simple, holistic approach to a healthier lifestyle. After struggling for years with her own relationship with food and her health, Gina was inspired to redefine and unlearn much of what she believed to be true and reclaim balance and control in her life. She is passionate about helping others find peace and purpose with food and joy in preparing it and finding ways to improve energy naturally. Gina and I have known each other since elementary school. We grew up together back in Berkeley Heights, and I feel so blessed to still have her in my life today. We're all in for a treat with this episode. She's a wealth of knowledge, wonderful person, and she's so passionate about what she does. So welcome to the show, Gina.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't expecting to get choked up before I started speaking. I'm so happy to be here. This is incredible. I love what you're doing, and I'm so excited to share a little bit of my knowledge with you all.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So, Gina literally is so knowledgeable about so many different things. And we were trying to figure out a way to approach this episode. So, I've already asked her to come on regularly to this show. But for today, we're going to go over some health and wellness tips that we can easily incorporate into our day. She works with a ton of clients, and she does get a lot of questions that are frequently asked and concerns that most people do have in regards to overall health and wellness. So that's where we're going to start today. Gina, what do you find are people's biggest health struggles these days?
Like you said, people come to me for all different things, but I have to say that one thing I hear the most is people saying, please just teach me how to eat healthy, or how do I get my family and kids to eat healthier? Right. So the struggle is real. Believe me, I still face it almost every day with my own girls. We do not eat perfectly. Not everything runs smoothly, but it's overwhelming. There's so much conflicting information out there. And many women I work with are a similar age to me. And we grew up in the 90s, which was probably when the worst health advice was given. So there's not only learning how to get healthier, but also unlearning all the terrible things we've been taught. Like you remember in the 90s, it was like, fat is evil and carbs are evil and, exercise more and eat less. And
Yep.
these things are really not benefiting us at all. But I think typically the reason why I find people want to be healthier is because they're just not feeling their best. They're lacking energy, they're always tired, and we start to believe that this is normal, right? It's normal to just feel tired, but it's not. Especially with moms, we're not eating enough nutrients, we're not sleeping well enough, we're not slowing down enough or taking any time for ourselves because it's just this season of our lives and it's hard to do. It's hard to prioritize our health, but we're just not feeling well and we want to feel better. So I think that's a big part of it. Another health struggle, I would say, and this probably isn't surprising, is women holding on to excess weight that may be causing inflammation or just discomfort, not just physically, but that goes into how we view ourselves, right? That piece, it doesn't always leave. Like just because we're not a teenager anymore, we still have insecurities. But weight is a really funny thing. I have a long history with struggling with weight and body image. It took me a long time to heal my relationship with food and get to a point where I feel more comfortable in my skin. I think a big part of that is just understanding weight and that it goes much deeper than eating less and working out more, which again is some of the worst advice.
Just what you
But
want to
that's a
tell
whole
someone who
other,
comes to you being exhausted, right? Like someone's
yeah,
exhausted, they're depleted, they're
right.
so tired. Okay, well, just eat less and start exercising more because that's
Yeah, terrible,
realistic.
terrible advice and it backfires. So,
Yes.
but yeah, like, I mean, the problem with both weight and energy is that it typically stems from something imbalanced in the body, right? Like our body is not going to willingly release weight if it's not feeling right. So it could be something as simple as you're just not eating well, the right foods, not eating enough, but it could be you're not sleeping well, you're not drinking enough water, but it could go deeper to being something more of a hormonal issue or a GI issue. But typically there's some type of underlying inflammation or like dysbiosis in the body. So I really do try to dig a little deeper. So that's kind of like that holistic approach that we were trained in where I went to school, that it goes much further than the food. So what is that root cause? That's, the underlying cause that is making you hold on to that excess weight or not have energy. And just figuring out simple ways to get to a more balanced homeostatic state and prepare your body to be willing to release the weight or to feel better. And in order to do that, you have to come from a place of strength. So I think that's a big issue is that we just don't even understand weight. We buy into all of the gimmicks like lose 30 pounds in this amount of time. And that's not a realistic, healthy, or sustainable approach. So it's a big thing. I
Yeah.
hear a lot.
And you know what, Gina? I can't tell you how many doctors have told me, and I do have some underlying like thyroid issues and hormonal issues that I'm working on straightening out now. But for years, I'm like, oh, I'm really tired. I don't understand. I'm so tired. And
Mhm.
I feel like something might be wrong. And not like hypochondriac, but I just was like, oh, I'm still kind of young. I'm generally healthy. I feel like I should feel better. And pretty much the response that I always got was, you know, you've got 3 kids, you've got a lot going on, you're
Yeah.
just tired. And I feel like what you're offering here and what you offer to people who come to you for coaching and everything is, like you said, getting to the root cause. Like maybe there are some
Mhm.
simple enough tweaks that people
Yeah,
do. And I
for
thought it was
sure.
really interesting that you're saying, not eating enough. We are
Yeah,
all
it's a
programmed
big
like
one.
you said, eat less, eat
Mhm.
less. Isn't there even these apps that you count all the calories that
Oh,
come in, but
don't
a
even
calorie
get
is
me
not a
started on
calorie,
that. Right.
right? Like your calories from an apple, the sugar from an apple is not the same sugar you're gonna get when you drink a
Mhm.
Sprite. So
Right.
it's not all the same. And I feel like
It's
there
not.
is so much like
Misinformation.
yeah, misinformation, contradicting information,
Yeah.
even trying to eat healthy. What does that even look like?
Yeah.
So, what does that look like to you in terms of eating healthy?
Sure. Oh my gosh, this is like a topic I love to dive into. But before I start that, something you said like struck me, and I hope this resonates with everyone listening. You are often the most intuitive with your body. A doctor doesn't know you. They don't know your life. They don't know everything, your whole situation. Sometimes when we have these feelings that something is wrong, we know better than any doctor, and it doesn't always look like it's wrong on paper,
Right,
right?
right.
So trusting your instinct, your gut, and if you're just not feeling right, like reaching out to the right people or starting somewhere.
Yep. To
Yeah.
interject, who would you say the right
Mhm.
people would be? So, I'll
Yeah.
just use myself as an example. On paper, blood work looks
Mhm.
good. Technically, it's in
Right.
the normal range and
Yes.
looks fine.
Yes. Well, let me just tell you, it's always important to keep up with all of your appointments and things
Sure.
like that, because if something is well out of range, like you'll be able to spot it fairly quickly. But when I studied functional medicine, I learned something pretty eye opening about that range, right? So this is interesting. That's not a healthy range. That's an average range. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
that's the average range of issues that people are having. So it doesn't necessarily make it healthy. So if your fasting glucose is on the high end, you don't want fasting glucose at the high end. You want that middle to low. Your vitamin D, you don't want it on the low end. You want it middle to high, right? There are certain things. So there is a lot of illness within a normal range. Having someone who's able to interpret lab works, and this sometimes goes beyond, like doctors have so many other things that they're doing that lab work might not be a deep part of their training, like how to look at like and, they don't test for certain things like magnesium and like the full thyroid panel and things like that. So the problem is in order to get a lot of that testing, it's not covered by insurance. But
Right.
if you're really feeling like, something is wrong, seeing a more holistic functional medicine type of practitioner who's going to go beyond the numbers and really work to get the root cause, or working with a health coach and just scratch the surface. I did study functional medicine, but that was a little deep for me. So I really love starting with the basic things that you can do and going from there. And if you're still not feeling well after doing these things to support yourself, then maybe you dig a little bit deeper. So I just thought that was really interesting. So I do try to keep up with all my regular doctor visits.
So I think I did interject though. So what does healthy eating look like to you? How would you kind of summarize
Okay.
healthy eating?
Oh my gosh, I could talk about this forever, but short and sweet. I think the healthiest eaters really learn to listen to their body and be more intuitive and mindful when making food choices. There is not one food that is healthy for everyone or unhealthy for everyone. But listening to your hunger cues and honoring your hunger is a huge piece of learning how to eat the right foods for you. But also, when we say mindful eating, what does that mean? That means asking yourself how you're feeling before, during, and after a meal. So this is kind of how you weed out like the foods that aren't suiting you. I know you, Anne-Marie, you knew like gluten was not serving you,
Yep.
right? So sometimes we don't slow down enough to listen, or we're not recognizing that some of the foods that we eat support us. So we always want to eat foods that are supporting us and nourishing us. So that being said, good choices to make, especially for females, especially as we're approaching our 40s and, upper ages, we want to make sure that we're eating sufficient protein and that we're eating enough. Because the second we start eating not enough, it's going to have an adverse effect on our hormones. And then it's going to cause our blood sugar to be out of balance, which is going to be causing cravings and spikes in our energy and our mood and our irritability. So this is a really hard thing. We had a conversation about not drinking coffee on an empty stomach.
Yes. Tina blew my
Let me
mind.
tell you the reason for that.
Maybe this is
Yeah.
half my problem.
Most of us, that you're not alone. But typically, once you get to our age, you want to have around even 30 grams of protein within an hour of waking in order to stabilize your blood sugar, right?
Okay,
So
what
I
does that
always
look
lead
like?
with,
Give us an
so,
example.
oh my
30
gosh.
grams.
Well, that's probably like 3 eggs, believe it or not, not just one. One is not sufficient. I know not everyone is supportive of animal proteins, but you absorb more protein from an animal source than a plant source. Unless you're really savvy at pairing your plant proteins, you need to make sure it's a full essential, like 9 essential amino acids coming together to make it a complete protein. So that's quinoa would be one, believe it or not, avocados are, some legumes are complete proteins, soy, like things like that. But I follow a few people who really do hormone stuff, and they're big fans of eating dinner type foods at breakfast.
Interesting.
And that sounds so bizarre to us, but think about it. Here in this country, what do we typically serve for breakfast? Bagels, pancakes, toast, like all those simple carbs
Yeah,
that
there's like
are
no protein in
not
there.
right, unless you're eating eggs. But again, are you eating enough eggs? So I'm not there. I'm not close to eating enough unless I have my protein shake. So I use my complete protein and I put in a little extra peanut butter. I put some seeds in there, and then I can assure that I'm getting a lot of protein in the morning. But most mornings for me, it looks like I make like these no bake oat balls, which I'll share the recipe for, that are packed with protein. And I'll have like 2 of those with my coffee, or like I make a banana bread or banana muffin that I really up the protein and fiber. And I'll have a little bit of that with my coffee because I'm not there yet. I'm not ready to sit down to like a full meal, or not. I don't always have the ability to do so. But if you could lead with protein, fat, and fiber, like healthy fats, that's going to really help sustain your blood sugar and your energy levels throughout the day, your hunger. And then you won't need to like snack and pick throughout the day, because that is not supportive of our blood sugar. You really want to eat 3, maybe 4 good meals. I always say sometimes you have to eat more in order to eat less. And what I mean by that, if you just sit down and eat an actual balanced meal, you're not going to be eating all that extra stuff throughout the day. So sometimes
Yeah.
you actually end up eating less or consuming less like wasteful calories, right? So leading with protein, fat, and fiber, always getting color into your diet, not artificial, obviously, but adding in. So that's where your like fruits and veggies come in, because that's going to give you all your important micronutrients, which are like vitamins and minerals. And then, making sure that it tastes good, like flavor, things you love, eating the things you love as well, and not having that fear of food. If you want the brownie, eat the damn brownie and move on with it. Don't stress about it before. eat it out of, pity to yourself and then feel terrible about it. So I think those are my top things for what healthy eating looks like in a nutshell.
Exactly. No, it's so interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
it's fascinating. Maybe I'll try to do some kind of poll after we do this episode. I would love to know if people eat 30 grams of protein in a day, let
In a
alone at
day.
breakfast.
Right.
I feel
Yeah.
like that's
I
always
know.
really a lot, and it's interesting because I was gonna ask you about 3 meals versus the snacking, 'cause I recently had
Yeah.
a doctor tell me to try to avoid the snacking. She's like, "It's really not good,"
Yes.
and it's probably for those exact same reasons that you just said, that then it's
I agree with that.
usually not the best foods that we're snacking on, and
And
so 3 to 4 really good meals a day, and you said it's important, I thought this was interesting too, within an hour of waking to be having that really
yeah.
solid breakfast.
So you want to think of what are things that I can do now this week, but that I'll still be doing in a year or two from now because you don't want anything to be too drastic,
Right.
you know? So
How about at the
anyway.
other end of the day? So, I've always heard that it's not good to eat too close to bedtime because then your
Oh,
body, as you go to sleep, your body is working
yep.
on digesting the food rather than resting.
Right.
So, what's the timeline on that?
Yeah. So funny enough, I just did a 3-part webinar on sleep. And this is one of the things, one of my tips for more restful sleep is to not go to bed hungry, but also give your body adequate time to digest. And you're like, great, Gina, that doesn't really give me much advice at all. So that window's going to look different for everyone because if you typically eat on the earlier side and you're done eating at 6 and you're not going to bed till 11, think about that. That's a 5-hour fast already before you're about to fast for the night. So having like a handful of nuts or some dark cherries or something, not too close to your bedtime. You don't really want to eat like an hour or two getting too close to your bedtime because that might keep your body up. Your organs are now working harder for this newest food that's coming, but making sure that you're not starving when you go to bed because then your other hormones are going to be calling for food. So just finding that balance with you. But one piece of advice I will give on this is if you love your dessert, great, eat it by all means, but just eat it closer. This sounds weird, closer to your dinner.
Ooh, I do
So
that.
don't,
I do that. My
oh,
family makes fun
good.
of me.
Yeah, like almost immediately,
I
like
do
not
that.
immediately, but like
Yeah.
really within like a half hour. Don't wait much
Interesting.
longer. And the reason for that is again, whenever we have something that is primarily sugar, if we can pair it with like protein and fat and fiber, it's going to slow that spike of sugar. So if you want to have a cookie or I love my dark chocolate, eat it closer to when you had dinner because your body has all of those other nutrients and a lot of protein. We typically eat a lot of more protein at dinner
Mm,
that it's going to not force your blood sugar to spike.
interesting.
So I thought that was like an easy tip that people could do. Just eat your dessert closer to dinner time.
Right.
Kind of just sending that signal to your brain that you're done. Like now you're done. You're content. So enjoy it and be done. So
Exactly. Then we're gonna end up eating, like, way more at some point. That
right. At some point
self-control
it's
is
gonna
gonna
backfire.
Yes.
Yeah, by human nature, all the things that we restrict are the things that we want the most.
Mhm.
So
Yep. So, really good tips for what healthy eating looks like. What about the healthy weight piece? How's the best way to know if you're in a healthy weight?
there's
Not to
been
think
so
that
much controversy around this lately too with that new like obesity pill for kids that they're coming out with. But I've just been listening in a lot about this and combining my own personal experience with the little bit of knowledge that I have. Of course, we all have genetics, right? We're predisposed to certain things. So it's not surprising when, if you come from a family who's a little overweight, sometimes your children might be, versus like a family who's just, they're super skinny and tiny and petite. Part of that is your genetics.
right.
But also, what you have to take into consideration is that it's also your lifestyle because what are each of those families doing that's contributing to? So every body is super unique, whether your parents are a certain way, like your body is still unique to you. And everybody does have a set point. It's called a set point. I always relate it to like a heating system in your home, right? You set the temperature to 68 degrees. And then when it starts to get a little cold, the heating system kicks in. When it gets too warm, the heat goes off. So that's like your weight too. So once your body figures out what that set point is, if you start to lose a little bit of weight doing something drastic, your body's going to probably come back to that same point. Or like around the holidays, we all freak out that we're going to gain weight and, it's going to stay forever. Like everyone gains like 2 or 3 pounds over the holiday, But guess what? In a few months, your body's going to like re-regulate. I don't know that I've varied much from like 5 pounds here or there in the past few years of my life. Now I'm getting closer to the point where it probably will be a little bit more of a challenge because naturally, when we go through changes and things like that, like sometimes weight is a symptom of that.
Right.
So here's the thing. Once you start giving your body what it needs, you're eating well, you're doing all the things, and you get to a weight that feels a little bit more comfortable and you go by your feelings, right? That's the really hard thing to do. Whenever
Mhm.
we use like an outside metric that really pulls us away from our ability to be intuitive. So even a scale, all those calorie counters and things like that, those outside metrics pull us away from if we're really still hungry, if we're full, all of our hunger
Right.
signals,
Right.
how we feel at our clothes. Sometimes, people aren't always losing weight out of vanity. You have a lot more inflammation sometimes. When you're pregnant and you have those extra pounds on your body, walking up the stairs is hard. But also on the flip side, I have a lot of women who are like, I want to get stronger. I feel weak. I want to bulk up. Like I want to be stronger. So this is a whole journey with more intuitive, mindful eating to
Right.
find your set point, and it's mental as much as it is physical of what you're eating. So I don't know. That was kind of vague, but
No, really what I'm hearing is this slowing down piece and taking that minute to
yes.
decide, okay, am I actually full? Because I know there are certain foods, and for me, it's chips can be such a downfall. I could easily eat a whole bag of chips
Oh,
because
yeah.
they're just so, I feel like they're so addictive. And
Hmm.
so a lot of times I'll be like, that's one particular food where I can't just have a little bit. I feel like I end up eating too
Right.
much when I eat those. So it's kind of going to be for me like, all right, am I eating the chips or just don't even go there? And
Okay. I have a tip for that when you're done.
okay. So there's things like that, and I feel like a lot of times that when you're sitting there dipping into the chip bag, right, shoveling chips in,
Hmm.
it's mindless eating, and we're not paying
Yes.
attention, and we're either bored or we're stressed or we're, like, at a party listening, talking, doing listening, just kinda sitting there eating, for
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
reason, and just taking that minute to say, "Oh, do I even wanna eat these right now? Am I hungry?" Or maybe to think, "Oh, there's a nice, beautiful meal coming in an hour. Do I wanna
Hmm.
ruin it by eating this right?" So, there's that piece, and then just kind of forgetting the scale, but taking the time to decide, "How do I feel, and
Yeah.
how do these foods make me feel?" And,
Hmm.
going back just for a minute about what you were saying before about being intuitive about the food choices. How quickly, like if I go eat a regular slice of pizza thinking it's, cauliflower crust and it's gluten free,
Right.
I feel like I notice things pretty quickly. My stomach gets kind of gurgly pretty quickly, but I also notice that there can be lingering things like a headache, a really bad
Yeah.
headache later, not instant or anything like that. But typically, when do these signs, if a food is not agreeing with us, how quickly do those
Yes.
show up?
Well, this is the hard part. This is what makes it so hard to identify a food intolerance or an allergy because this is the difference between an anaphylactic allergy
Right.
versus an IgG. You're reacting to something in the food, but not to the point where it's anaphylactic. Because what happens with more of the intolerances and things like that you're talking about, they are distant in both time and location to what you're
Mhm.
eating. All right. And what I mean by that is if I'm allergic to peanuts, like anaphylactically allergic to peanuts, so the timing, the second it touches my lips, I'm going to have that reaction right there. Right. Whereas something like gluten, it's a little more insidious because you can eat the gluten, right? And it's not necessarily your mouth and your breathing. It could come out in a different location. So gluten can do anything from like joint pain to stomach discomfort to brain fog to skin issues, right? So it's distant in location. It's not your mouth and necessarily your stomach. But also it could take a few days and it can linger. So that's what's really hard.
Yeah.
So that's where like doing like an elimination diet and then reintroducing comes into play. You can do food testing, intolerance testing, but the problem with that is you're usually reactive to the foods you eat the most. So sometimes you might get false readings from that. But if you were to do that, really working with a practitioner who's savvy and understanding food intolerances. But yeah, that's what's different between like an anaphylactic reaction versus like an IgG kind of like food intolerance because it's
Yeah.
distant in time and
Yeah.
location.
Really tricky to figure out.
Yes, for sure.
So what's your
But
tip about not eating a whole bag of chips?
oh, right.
I'm asking for a
So
friend.
Asking for a friend. Who's this podcast for anyway? All right. This goes with anything that you're craving. So we all have like our forbidden foods or those foods that we're like, I really shouldn't eat that, right? I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. Nothing is off limits. That's the first thing. There's not one food, unless obviously allergic reaction, whatever.
Sure.
You know, there is a time and place for every food. And sometimes it satisfies us a different purpose. Sometimes we need it for nourishment, physically, like we're hungry, but sometimes for our own mental and emotional state. And that's fine. I know food should be food and whatever, but food is so much more. It's information. It's so many more things. So understanding that there is no food off limit. So for me, like I love like a fudgy chocolate brownie and my mother-in-law makes them all the time. And, I have a much better relationship with them now. I don't dream about them and, it doesn't consume my mind. But once in a while, like I'm going to have that brownie.
And that's
But
probably
if
why,
you're
because you let yourself have it once in a while, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
There are so many things that were forbidden for me, like pizza and bagel, like for the longest time, and they were off limits. And I would literally dream about them. And now I'm like, oh, maybe I'll have like a quarter of a bagel, or I eat pizza. We eat pizza often, and I only have a salad with it or something. But if you are not at the point where you have that better relationship with food, and you're worried that you're going to overindulge on the chips, on the cookies, here's my advice to you. Take the handful of chips or 2 handfuls of chips and have something with it. So grab some nuts with it, grab some fruit with it, right? So you make yourself like a little platter so that you eat the chips, but you're supporting yourself with those other nutrients that are gonna, especially if it's sugar, not spike your blood sugar, or chips can become very addictive. So maybe changing the taste in your mouth to move away from, eat the chips first and then go to the fruit and then whatever. And then you'll be full too, because chips on their own are not going to fill you. You might feel gross after, but you're not going to be,
you're not full.
an hour later, you're going to be hungry.
Yep.
So it's always about adding in. So at IIN, where I studied, we called that crowding out. So you don't ever say like, I can't have this, but what can I add in so that I can still keep the thing that I love, but support it with more nutrients or things like that. So I do that a lot with pizza, because your girl here could easily take down 4 slices, but I know I'm going to feel sick. So instead, sometimes I'll have 2 slices and I'll have salad with it. Or I'll put like arugula right on my pizza, or I'll make some eggplant on the side, or some type of protein. I always open like a can of beans for my girls, and I'll take some, because I am not giving up pizza when I really want it.
Right.
But I add in. I'm always adding in nutrients. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, that helps a lot. And then talking about feeling guilty and that piece of,
Yeah.
I shouldn't have done that. Then
There's no guilt.
and
It does not make you
better.
Food is not moral. Like it doesn't make you a good or bad person for eating food. Right.
I love that.
And
yeah,
we
never
always
thought of
talk
it like
about
that.
like willpower, but guess what? There's really no willpower when you're hungry, because your hormones are much stronger than your willpower. And that doesn't make you weak or anything. But when your body is hungry, our body's one purpose is to keep us alive and to keep us healthy. And our body is smart. Like sometimes you grab the cookie, but it's your body calling for energy. So really, like a big part of your health journey is appreciating your body, learning to listen to your body, and understanding the motive and what's going on. So that's that whole mindful piece too. Why are we choosing the things that we're eating? What are you feeling at that moment, right? What is your feeling? What is your hunger level? What is your energy level? How do you feel after eating it? Are you feeling guilt? Are you like, that hit the spot and I'm ready to move on?
This is going to help a lot of people. And there's so many more
I hope
questions
so.
as you're talking. When you come home and you're like, it's dinner time, but dinner's not ready and you're starving. So that a lot of times that is where I'll grab chips, because it's like there and you're hungry. And that's when I end up overeating them. So in that instance, like when you're about to sit down and start preparing your dinner and you're eating soon, but you know what I'm talking about. You're really, really hungry. What's a good quick thing you could do to just stave that off for a little bit so that you can then eat a regular meal?
Okay. First, I'm going to back up a little and say that could be maybe you're not eating enough at breakfast and lunch. Because if we're eating a really balanced breakfast, that should sustain us for like 4 hours. Sometimes you get a little hungry in between. Fine, great. And, honor that hunger and have I love to keep like hard boiled eggs in my fridge, hummus and things like that. And then lunch again, like if you're not eating a big enough lunch, or like me being a teacher for so many years and you don't have a flexibility with your schedule. Last year, I think my lunch was at like 10:40. So I
Right.
was starving by 3 o'clock. So always being prepared. So this is when maybe like a little bit of meal prep can help, because maybe you can have those hard boiled eggs in the fridge, or you have that hummus. So you have a few chips and vegetables with your hummus, right? An oat ball. I always keep oat balls in the fridge. We often wait so late to eat dinner. In a lot of other countries, their biggest meal is much earlier in the day, which
Hmm.
is a lot more supportive to
Sure.
digestion and hormones and things like that. But honoring your hunger, again, it always comes down to, because otherwise, then what happens at dinner? You're ravenous and you're going to eat so fast, and then
Yep.
you're going to get a stomach ache, and then you're going to feel bloated, and then you're going to be uncomfortable when you sleep, and it's like a domino effect. But trying that, like if you want your chips right before dinner, you can't wait till dinner. Great, have some of the chips, put some carrot sticks and hummus with it, and be okay. Like see it on your plate and be like, this is going to keep me full, and I'm going to move on and cook dinner, and then I'll be ready to eat.
I think
It's the
that's a
same
great
thing
tip.
like going to like we have this mentality, and I still hear some of my friends say it. I'm not going to eat all day because we have a big dinner tonight, or
Yep.
like I have a party this evening. Do not go hungry to the party. Support yourself early in the day. Eat a really big breakfast that morning, right? With protein. Like on holiday mornings, every single holiday, my girls and I, we make waffles and eggs. And that's like, you're going to eat that before a holiday dinner? Yes, we are, because our body is going to be ready to absorb all the other nutrients. Whereas if you go so long without eating, what happens to your metabolism? It slows, it shuts down. And then all of a sudden you have this onslaught of food and your body's like, holy crap, and it can't digest fast enough.
Right.
So then you get bloating and discomfort and things like that. So
Interesting. So we have to be prepared at least a little
be
bit.
prepared. Be prepared and honor your hunger.
So we've covered a lot
Mhm.
already. I think we went over where to start. You really want to take that initial step back and be
Mhm.
intuitive about how the food's making you feel
Yeah,
and what you're eating and all of those things. So, how about motivation, consistency, having some quick
sure.
healthy snacks, obviously, to just grab from the fridge?
Yeah.
What are some other like,
Yeah. Some like basic
yeah, like
things.
really quick things
Okay.
that everybody can go do?
All right. So you can break down your health into like 5 or 6 basic pillars, right? Your nutrition. So we talked a little bit of that, being prepared with good foods, your hydration, mindful movement, like some type of movement into your day, your sleep, your stress management, and then that joy and gratitude piece. Because without joy, so I know you're probably like, that's a lot. It doesn't sound so simple. But if I walk you through a few things that you can do, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that's so simple. So, my best advice I would have to say is to start by looking and being mindful about how you start your day and how you end your day. All right. So, this is going to be super indicative of how the rest of your day unfolds. So, let's talk about how we start your day. And I want you to think about it before you say to yourself, I don't have time to do anything in the morning and I'm not getting up any earlier. I've said that a million times, but just hear me out, because I've lived in that space for so long, but I had to find a way to make it work. So the first thing you can do when you wake up is to resist looking at your phone. All right. So we want sunlight on our eyes before blue light. All right. So I know sometimes you have to glance at your phone just to make sure there's no emergencies or things like that, but really trying to be mindful of like the first 30 minutes of you being awake, to not have the phone in front of you, because that's going to mess up your circadian rhythm. Believe it or not, when we see natural sunlight on our eyes, it's going to produce serotonin. That's like our happy hormone. That's going to
Mhm.
wake us up. So if you're up before the sun rises, fine, just keep the phone away. And then as soon as the sun rises, make sure you're looking out the window, obviously not directly at the sun, but getting some natural sunlight on your eyes. This is going to be the best way to start that regulation of your hormones and to keep your circadian rhythm, which I'll have to do a whole other podcast on circadian rhythm. That ties
Yes.
into my sleep talk. That put me
Yes.
on the calendar for that one. Yeah.
I will.
Um, but seeing the sun helps your body so naturally.
And how long are we
So that's
talking?
just a few minutes. Just get that sunlight on, take a deep
Okay.
breath, like wake up and just get some sunlight on your eyes before you're in front of your screen and
Sure.
your phone. All right. So once you've done that, you know, brushing your teeth upon waking is like a really important thing. I don't think a lot of us do that. I think a lot of us wait until we've had our coffee or breakfast, but do both. Brush your teeth
Mhm.
both times. And the reason for that is we detoxify a lot when we sleep, and our body brings up a lot of yucky stuff. Like I wake up with such a funny taste in my mouth anyway. I couldn't imagine. Now that's the first thing I do,
Yes, me
getting rid
too.
of those toxins, and then drinking a glass of water upon waking. is so important. So, like I said, sunlight before blue light, hydrate before caffeinate. So I religiously, it's my ritual. I make my pot of water. I don't bring it to a full boil, and I put lemon and a pinch of salt is really good for your adrenals, ladies.
What kind of salt? Like
Like a pink
sea salt
Himalayan salt
or
or
okay,
sea salt, not like white table salt that's been stripped of all the good minerals.
gotcha.
Um, we don't get enough salt into our diet. Well, that could be a whole other topic, salts. And I'd use a little apple cider vinegar just because it's really good for digestion. You don't have to go that far. But getting the first thing that goes into your body is water. Again, that's going to help your all the detoxing that your body did during sleep, which yes, sleep is the best way to detox. Don't buy into all this detox tea and, this, whatever. Your body does it naturally for you. You can support it. But getting water into your system before you caffeinate. And then we did talk about coffee on an empty stomach. And people are so shocked to hear that, but it's actually doing more harm than good and has the adverse effect on your energy and your anxiety. It spikes our cortisol and our blood sugar. It causes more cravings, irritability. I noticed this especially after having my third baby. I'm intolerant to the caffeine, and everyone's different. There's a different amount of caffeine that's going to suit everyone, but I'm a coffee lover and it's not something I'm willing to remove. So I've just taught myself how to have a better relationship with coffee. But honestly, that can be a big thing for you if you're the type of person that has cravings and anxiety and things like that. Eating a little bit more protein in the morning, especially with your coffee, or delaying your coffee a little
Okay.
bit.
Okay.
So those are
Yeah.
three like simple things.
Yeah, those are
Um,
very easy.
and then I did another webinar on mindful movement, and I started doing something because I had a really irrational relationship with exercise, just like I did with food, because I thought the reason to exercise was to burn as many calories as possible. And you didn't exercise enough unless you were soaking wet and sore and tired. And
Mhm.
that is one of the worst things you can do for your hormones and your body, because you're actually putting more stress on your body, and stress causes cortisol and inflammation and things like that. So I replaced the word a lot of times exercise or working out with moving or movement. So it's much more gentle to say to yourself, I'm going to get a little movement in today, instead of
Yes.
saying like, I'm going to work out today.
Yep.
Like, it's just a gentler word. And believe it or not, our brain takes cues from the words that we use, and it can just become more accepting and doable. And there's not one exercise that works for everyone, like certain exercises for different body types. But my one thing I would say, because I'm a big proponent, obviously you heard I'm a fitness instructor and I teach mostly Pilates and bar. What I love about those two types of exercise is that they really are lifelong. I've taught many women who are 60s into their 70s. My one, I love her. She just turned 80. She's taken all my bar
Oh my
classes, my
gosh, I
Pilates
love it.
classes, my TRX, because the type of movement is so lifelong and it's not so high impact that it's, causing decay on our muscles and our bones,
Right.
right? So getting some light stretching in, working on your balance, flexibility, and your core strength is so important. We need that lifelong. We want to be strong from the inside out. So I think that's super important. And then that helps stress management too, and energy, because believe it or not, we think that by moving our bodies, we're going to be more tired, but a lot of times it energizes us more, but it also impacts our mental health,
Mhm.
right? So that could be a great way to manage stress. There's no way to eliminate stress. It's just not possible. But how can we manage it? And how can we teach ourselves to react differently to the stress in our lives? So breathing is super important. I do a whole talk on breathing and the autonomic nervous system. But what actually happens when we slow down and breathe and find times for joy in our lives, it helps us to be more present. And anytime we could be more present and in tune with our bodies, in tune with nature, it's just going to support us so much more.
Gina, you're a
So,
genius. I'm
so
taking notes here for the
I need
listeners. I
to,
have at least 5 other episodes that we'll be doing with Gina.
I'm going to be busy.
Yeah, she's just gonna have to be a regular because just so many things to dive into. And you're so passionate about this and you
Oh,
just
I think.
you know so much.
You know what?
And
I've lived it. I've lived it. So I know the struggles. I'm still working on it. But yeah, it makes a big difference. Like, I'm a different person now. I regret, and you shouldn't live with regret, but how I felt about myself and how I viewed health and everything from the time I was, even probably before I was a teenager, because, it starts early with girls,
yeah. Yeah.
through my almost my 30s. Like, I missed out on so much because I was so concerned and just had this terrible relationship with myself most of all. So that affected everything, you know?
Sure. Yep.
So, yeah, anyway.
And boy, did you do a 180 because you're,
Ah,
I mean, not only can I tell that you're so, comfortable in your own skin and living out all of these things that you preach, but you're sharing it with so many people. So,
I hope so.
it's awesome. So, as we kind of wrap up our time today for now, can you just give us a little description of what slowing down, mind, body health, what it looks like for you?
Oh,
Like a perfect day if you could choose. Okay,
yeah.
this is gonna go at my own pace today. I'm gonna do the things that
Okay.
serve me best. What would
My
that look like?
gosh. I'm terrible at this. So it's so funny. I really have slowed down a lot and I'm like good in so many ways. But if I'm being completely honest, this is a challenge for me. It's something I really have to mindfully work at. I'm a yes girl. I, have major FOMs, fear of missing. My husband makes fun of me, but, and I'm a busy person. I fill my days and I'm doing a lot of different things right now. So it's a practice.
Yep.
Slowing down is a practice, just like anything else. So I've talked about a few things. For me, starting looking at my mornings and my evenings, starting there for me was a huge like shift because I do take my mornings a little bit slow. I do those things that I said to you. Like I honestly do that. And that just kind of sets the tone for my day. I don't always get to get up and move in the morning, but I walk a lot. So, you know, those routines, my morning and my evening, setting the signal to myself before bed, like 30 to 60 minutes before bed, that it's time to unwind. That's a huge piece of it. And there's plenty of wasted time in my day where like I'm scrolling social media and things like that. And
Yep,
I've
all of
really
us
been
do that.
trying mindfully, especially at night, to replace that with reading a good book. I didn't know how much I loved reading until I was like in my 30s.
Me
And if only I
too.
loved it when I was in high school, I would have probably like done a lot better on my tests and everything. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But replacing my like stolen moments or my screen time with a book is like, oh my God, I get lost. My husband's like, oh, great, you got a new book. I'm going to lose my wife for a week. And it's so true because and he's like, how do you tune everything out? I'm like, it's survival mode. I've had
Yeah.
to train myself to tune everything else out just so that I can. So reading a great book is a big way that I slow down. So my morning routine, my evening routine, reading. And then the other is Friday nights. So in my teens and 20s, maybe even into my early 30s, like I wouldn't have been caught dead at home on a Friday night because I had to do all the things. And now I really try hard not to commit to a lot on Fridays. And I feel like my friends are the same way. We're a very social town and we're all together. But Fridays are kind of like my night. I know it's the one night that I don't cook. So I'm ordering. I pour myself a glass of wine and we just have a slow family night. And that kind of just gets me ready for the weekend. And I just look forward to it. Occasionally things pop up, but like it just refills me after a long, hectic week. Those things are my ways that I'm working on slowing down. And I still got to work on all the in between, Monday through Thursday, Sunday through Thursday.
But it also helps, I think, having that thing to look forward to Friday night. Like,
Yes,
you're gonna
for
have that
sure.
chill time and you can relax and just
Yeah,
the family time. It does help get through those busy weeks, right? Just
it
having that
does.
light at the end of the tunnel.
It does for sure.
Gina, thank you. Thank you doesn't really do it justice, but thank you for sharing all of this with us. And I did ask Gina also to share some little recipes and things. So
Oh,
there's going to
yes.
be a lot in the show notes today.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I want to send everybody there. Check out the show notes. You can see them under the description of the episode wherever you listen to the podcast. But check them out because I'm going to put a lot of this information in there. And Gina has a lot of great pieces of information out. She has a membership site, website, ebook. So, Gina, just tell everybody where I'll put it in there, but
Sure.
where's the best place to kind of find you, connect with you?
Yeah. If you're on Instagram, I'm Simply Balanced with Gina. I post a lot of my recipes there and links. My website is a work in progress because I've kind of changed since I've designed the website and found my audience a little bit more, but you can still log into there. And then you can subscribe to my newsletter. I only send one per week, but I always send recipes and little health tips. And
It's
I always have
really
links for
helpful.
like my
Great.
ebook. Oh, I hope so. Thank you. Yeah, I have an ebook, a recipe and prep guide ebook which has been pretty popular. I've gotten a lot of great feedback on it. And it just has all tips to navigate, like how to even plan your meals, shop for your meals, cook your meals. It's got recipes, it's got printable, like dates and everything for you in there. So
Awesome. So
it's kind of like
helpful.
having my guidance without me there.
Go check it out, everybody. And Gina, just thank you so much for being here today. And we do
You're
look forward to
welcome.
having you back. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and have been inspired to slow down and start living life at your own pace. As a brand new podcast, your listener voice matters. If Let's Slow Down is resonating with you, please take a minute to leave a review and rate us. Subscribe to the show wherever you listen and share it with friends. Remember, this is a process, so go easy on yourself. Be gentle and take all the space you need to thrive, because the world needs you to be at your best, to love and serve others and yourself.